quite sure what I was going to do with the back at this point. In fact, I don't think I ever really decided what to do with the back. I just left and went outside. Greetings and welcome back to Medieval Engineers Minion Village. That's right, we are back in our Minion Village, our burgeoning village. Well, I mean, it's not huge yet, to be fair. It's only really 2 buildings. Well, 2 buildings and 1 little addition, which I have made off camera, which let's have a little look at. There it is. I have given the minions a well for them to draw water from the depths. The depths down below. It's got your standard power transfer set up for hauling a bucket up. It doesn't work at the moment because, well, it's probably a facet of the Shaman's Curse. But it causes a massive lag spike when you attempt to turn the wheel, and then nothing happens. So those cursed shamans raising bizarre rock pillars, messing up our lighting, and now preventing simple mechanical pulley devices like this from working. Alas, but we soldier on nonetheless. Right, so today I thought we might try building some kind of chapel or some sort of construct like that. I think we're going to go back up here where we originally started constructing our inn, which, as you can see, I have added a couple of windows to. That's all I've done. I've just done a little bit of landscaping. I've added the windows, and I've built this little well area with quite an elaborate roof, actually, as it happens. It's probably a bit fancier than I had originally intended making it, to be fair, but I don't know. I may tweak around with this, and we'll see. But let's just crack on with building the chapel or the temple, whatever it turns out to be. Right. First of all, we'll lay down some foundations. And without having a clear idea in my mind of what I wanted it to look like in the end, I started with a standard 4-wide oblong foundation set. And because of how high it was off the ground, I put some steps in just to lead up to it, and I decided to put these along all sides, or certainly the front and the 2 left and right hand sides, and then extend it back a little bit more. And as I sort of sat back and looked at this, it put me in mind of more of an ancient Greek temple than a traditional Western Christian church or chapel, and I wasn't sure about this at this point, so I started by putting a couple of doorways in, and because it was an even number across, it was a double door. It would have to be a double door or an offset door, but I went with a double door, and then walls down either side. However, as I kind of sat back and looked at this, it continued to put me in mind of ancient Greece, more perhaps than the sort of traditional medieval Western Europe. So I took out some more wall sections and I added in some more archways just to emphasize that a bit more, because I figured that the minions would probably appreciate that sort of thing, not being from a specific era of our world themselves. And so this kind of informed the decisions going forward. I started by putting these pillars in, which again put me in mind more of kind of ancient Greece or Romanesque kind of temple design. And I also decided that it would probably need to be a little bit longer, because it isn't going to be all ancient Greek. Oh no, absolutely not. In fact, I wanted it to be a fusion of different styles and different designs. So, you know, as I sat back and looked at it, I started to picture in my mind this kind of fusion of an ancient Greek type of temple with a more traditional Western European chapel or church type of exterior and design. So, you know, I wanted to go with the peaked roof. I wanted to have a bell tower type attachment on the back, and so that's what I went with. And I started to build up the sloping front for the peaked roof to sit upon, and I used the wooden plaster, which actually, as it turns out, I didn't need to. I could have used the diagonal pieces of stone, which didn't occur to me at the time, but I do sort of like twig on them later on. But in the end, I think the wooden and plaster makes it look visually a bit more interesting. At the back, I wanted to have, as I say, a bell tower, so I built it out a little bit further just to give me the depth to have a reasonable sized temple section inside, and then also have the bell tower on the back. And I actually miscalculated this. I wanted to have a square bell tower the entire size of the building, and so I tried to do that, but in the end I accidentally built it 1 too shallow, so it's 4 wide but only 3 deep. But at the time I didn't realize that, so I just kept building it up, and sort of, you know, it didn't look quite right to me, but nonetheless, I persevered and we pushed the walls up on either side, and this is kind of the way that it wound up looking, which at the time I wasn't happy with. I didn't like the fact that it wasn't square, and it just seemed a little bit squat and a little bit ugly to me, and just too flat on the side of the building as well. So I took the decision to knock it down and start again, which is, you know, it's important to be prepared to do this sort of thing, especially if you don't have a clear vision in your head of what the building is going to look like to begin with. Sometimes you just have to knock back and start again. And I decided that actually maybe a 2x2 building would be more, a 2x2 tower would be more visually interesting. So I built the 2x2 up from the back wall just to kind of like get an idea. And then I took the sloping stone piece and put that running along either side, which again would also help to break up the building and make it a little bit more varied, as you have the normal roof meeting up with this kind of sloping brickwork. I toyed around with some corner pieces trying to get something to work, but actually in the end I realized that it would be perfectly fine just to have the roof come along and meet up with the sloping pieces as they are there. So I put the second wall up of the tower, and then because of the way this works, in order to support it properly, I had to get inside and put down some wall pieces, or some arch pieces actually, as I decided would be better here on either side to support the side walls of the tower, the bell tower. I actually misplaced an arch into the wall here, as you can see, and I left it there because I actually thought it might make quite a nice way to increase the visual detail of the building, and we'll come back and we'll look at that a bit later. But for now I wanted to get the tower done, so we put the two walls up, the two remaining walls, all the way up to the top, and then we fly on outside and we take a little look at it, and at this point I'm quite happy with it actually. I like the fact that the building looks less square as a result of having these sloping sides. I think the smaller tower is more interesting, potentially, more visually interesting than a large flat square tower, and so I stuck with it. I also realised at this point that I could use these sloping brick pieces in the front, but after having done one side and looking at it again, just purely for visual variety's sake, I decided to keep the wooden pieces. Now I may change this again in the future, but that was the decision I made at the time. I think it looked a little bit more interesting like this. So next it was time to put the roof on, and I decided to go for the third type of roof that we've not used yet in the Minion Village, again just to give the temple here a little bit more distinctiveness once the village starts coming together. I think generally speaking we're going to stick largely with the red roof for most of the buildings, and thatch, so thatch and red roof for most of the sort of like the normal buildings and stuff, and this wooden roof will perhaps be reserved for a few other buildings and things as we go forward. But let's take a little walk down inside. I really like these pillars. I really like the fact that as you step inside it feels more like a temple than a church as you go inside, which was definitely my intention as I was building it. As I said, I wanted to kind of fuse different designs. It's not a medieval village, so to speak. It is a fantasy world, and the minions are fantasy peoples living in it, and so, you know, creating this slightly more unusual type of design was definitely important. I'm not quite sure what I was going to do with the back at this point. In fact, I don't think I ever really decided what to do with the back. I just left and went outside and you know, took a nice little look around the place. Finished off these corner pieces. In general, I'm really pleased with the way it's coming together. We need to do something about that tower, though. It can't just sort of stick up like a giant chimney, which is what it sort of looks like at the moment. Checking structural integrity just to make sure that I haven't got any issues, but it all seems to be fine. So it's on to the tower, and my first thought was to put on a standard set of battlements. In fact, let's just take a beauty shot. Here we go. So my first thought was to put on like a standard set of battlements, like you might see on a sort of a normal old medieval church tower. And so I did that. We put on, you know, the standard sort of flaring pieces, and then the battlement sections all the way around the outer edge, which I think would probably have worked better had the tower been the sort of the full width. I mean, we fly down inside for no reason. Clearly, I just wanted to enjoy the space and breathe in the atmosphere that I was creating here. I'm starting to sound like Kevin MacLeod from Grand Designs, aren't I? I'm not really sure what weird wizard was really getting at with this design with his architectural plans seemed kind of chaotic and all over the place, and yet somehow it just worked. He's created a thing of pure beauty and elegance using materials traditional to the environment. That wasn't a very good Kevin MacLeod impression. I'm sorry, I will try and do better for next time, because actually I think that could be quite entertaining. But this time let's get back to the building and to the question at hand, which is this tower. And as I kind of like move around and sort of like look at it from different angles, it just was not sitting well with me. It wasn't working. It was sort of thin and then fat at the top, and you know, it looks like it's just planted on top of the building, and I didn't like it, and I decided that it was going to have to go because, you know, it just wasn't doing it for me. And so after sort of like thinking it through, it came time to knock it down again. But just the outside bit. So I took off the battlements and I took off the little flared sections, and I decided that actually maybe some kind of like peak section of the roof would be good. So I just went with normal roof actually in the end, same as the main building, just the little corner pieces all the way around. And actually this I really like. I really like it. I really like the fact that it's just kind of, again, it's got echoes of a church or a chapel, but it doesn't look like one. You know, like it is its own building. It is its own design. And I'm starting to sound like Kevin MacLeod again. I do actually watch quite a lot of Grand Designs. I do enjoy that show, which is a show here in the UK. Anyway, to break it up a little bit, I decided to put some windows in, which I think again helps to just add a little bit more visual detail to the outside. And at some point, if I get around to putting lights and things internally, it'll help to make it, you know, to bring it out even more and to help it to pop and stuff. I didn't want them to be regular though, so I kind of like put them in this sort of slightly offset approach to each other. So you've got kind of like these little diagonals with windows, almost kind of higgledy-piggledy. I mean, you can't be completely higgledy-piggledy in such a small building, but nonetheless, I was quite pleased with it. And as we sort of like, you know, we take a little beauty shot from the side, I'm really happy with this building, I have to say. Again, it's clearly kind of church or temple-esque without looking specifically like one. You know, it is its own kind of design. But it needs a bit of interior, you know. I mean, the inn still hasn't got its interior. It obviously does need it, but the church, the chapel, you know, more importantly perhaps than any of the other buildings, needs somewhere for the minions to come and, you know, to pray or do whatever it is that minions do when they try and talk to the gods. So we light it up first with some braziers or fire buckets, as the gods like to very descriptively refer to them. And, you know, I was going to put some king statues in here, but they don't fit, unfortunately, because I guess because they're multi-part pieces and they intersect with where the roof is coming in. So I had to give up on that idea, which left me at a little bit of a loss. So in the end, I decided I would just build my own kind of altar thing out of small bits of wood and stuff, and that's what I did. It's perhaps not the most elegantly designed piece of furniture in the world. I tend to be a little bit better at the larger scale stuff than these sort of like little things, using the little wood pieces. I get a little bit impatient with them, but you know, nonetheless I persevered because I wanted to create something that could, you know, act as a bit of an offering table, the sort of thing that you might see in an older type of temple design, with an altar that the supplicants or the minions in this case can come to on their own, bringing offerings and things to, you know, to show their devotion to the gods. I thought in this case there's a fairly limited number of things available to us, maybe some bits of wood and some bits of stone as sort of like elemental offerings almost. And then it kind of struck me that because it wasn't very well lit, I could perhaps do a little bonfire in the middle, which is almost like a candle. I mean, it's either that or the huge torches on either side, which are like massive candles. So I don't know. I thought it was alright though. I thought it was a good compromise. It is fire, and fire is definitely something that minions are probably going to be want to worship. I then finished it off just by sort of surrounding it with these chest pieces because it gave it a slightly more solid look to it, and it just seemed to improve it slightly, a little bit. I mean, it's still not the most beautiful altar in the world, I must admit. But it'll do the job for now, at least until or unless one of you can come up with a better altar. And if you can, by all means, send it across to me and it will find pride of place here in the temple. And that's it, nearly done, or at least nearly done for now. Obviously there'll be little improvements and stuff we can make as we go along. We chucked a couple more fire buckets outside just to light up the entranceway and make it look a little bit more inviting. I think what it needs is a bit of landscaping around here and maybe some grounds, maybe a graveyard out the back, and just generally kind of like, you know, little improvements here and there like that. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I kind of need to do the interior of the bell tower as well in some way, shape or form, I think. Be nice to actually have a bell up here of some sort. Although, you know, maybe that'll have to wait for mods or official support of some sort. But that'll have to wait. For now, I'm pretty happy with this. Internally, it's simple, but nice. I don't think we're going to bother with pews or anything. Externally, I'm fairly happy with it. It maybe looks a shade too much like a normal building. During editing, I've actually started to get ideas about maybe making the bell tower at the back more angled. But so I might mess around with that between episodes. However, let's look pointlessly somewhere else. Fantastic. Well, there we go. The Minion Village is expanding nicely. I think we're going to have to add a little bit more housing at some point. And we may do sort of 2 or 3 very simple little hut designs and then sort of duplicate them a few times just to help bulk the village out and add a bit of substance. So maybe that's what we'll do next time. If you've got any alternative suggestions, if there's a particular building or facility that you think the Minion Village is currently missing, let me know. Comment. And we will see what gets built next. Fantastic. Well, I have been Weird Wizard. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and I will see you later. Coming up on the channel, we'll return to the world of medieval engineers to discover what secrets the gods have unveiled in this week's update quest. And of course, the ever-popular Weird Wednesdays returns, where another curious, crazy, or downright confusing game gets the Weird Wizard treatment.